The function passed to setInterval is called for every step of the game. It is responsible for drawing everything on the canvas and for updating the state of the game. It clears the canvas and then draws the score, the snake, the apple, and the border. It also calls the move method on the snake, which, as you saw earlier, moves the snake one step in its current direction. After the call to setInterval, we end with the code for listening to keyboard events and setting the snake's direction. As always, you will need to type all this code inside the script element in your HTML document. To play the game, just load snake.html in your browser and use the arrows to control the snake's direction. If the arrow keys don't work, you might need to click inside the browser window to make sure it can pick up the key events. If the game doesn't work, there might be an error in your JavaScript. Any error will be output in the console, so look there for any helpful messages. If you can't determine why things aren't working, check each line carefully against the preceding listing. Now that you have the game running, what do you think? How high a score can you get? In this chapter, we made a full game using the canvas element. This game combines many of the data types, concepts, and techniques you learned throughout this book. Numbers, strings, booleans, arrays, objects, control structures, functions, object-oriented programming, event handlers, setInterval, and drawing with canvas. Now that you've programmed this snake game, there are lots of other simple two-dimensional games that you could write using JavaScript. You could make your own version of classic games like Breakout, Asteroids, Space Invaders, or Tetris. Or you could make up your own game. Of course, you can use JavaScript for programs besides games. Now that you've used JavaScript to do some complicated math, you could use it to help with your math homework. Or maybe you want to create a website to show off your programming skills to the world. The possibilities are endless. Here are a few ways you could improve and add features to the game. 1. Making the game bigger. Change the size of the game to 500 pixels square. Where do you need to modify the code to make it work at 500 pixels? 2. Coloring the snake. Our snake is a bit boring. Every segment of the body is blue. It might look a bit more like a real snake if you alternated the colors to create stripes. For example, make the head green and then alternate between blue and yellow for the rest of the body, or choose your own colors. 3. Making the game speed up as you play. Modify the game so that every time the snake eats an apple, the game speeds up. To do this, you will have to change the code to use setTimeout instead of setInterval. Because setInterval keeps calling a function at a regular interval that cannot be changed. Instead, you can repeatedly call a function with setTimeout and change the timeout delay each time you call it. Var animation time equals 100. Var game loop equals function / the code that draws and updates the game should go here. setTimeout. Game loop, animation time. Game loop. Instead of using setInterval to call a function repeatedly, the game loop function calls setAmountTheMeLoop, animation time. Which means call game loop again after animation time milliseconds. Like setInterval. This is a way to call a function over and over again, with a short pause between each function call. The difference is that you can easily modify the animation time from anywhere in your code by changing animation time. And the program will use that value for subsequent calls to setTimeout. One other thing to bear in mind here is that you need to find a new way to stop the game from looping when the game is over. How would you do that? 4. Fixing the apple.move method. Every time you move the apple, it moves to a new random location. But as written, there is nothing to stop the apple from moving to a block that part of the snake is already occupying. To prevent this, Modify the move method to take into account the current locations of the snake's segments. Hint use a while loop to keep calling move until it picks a location that's not occupied by the snake. Now that you've learned the basics of JavaScript, you're ready to venture out into a whole wide world of programming. You could learn another programming language, or you could choose to build on your knowledge of JavaScript, taking your skills to the next level. Where you go next is entirely up to you, but here are some ideas. We've looked at a lot of JavaScript in this book, but there's much more you can learn about the language. Here are some books and websites that will help you learn more of the details of JavaScript. JavaScript: The Good Parts by Douglas Crawford, O'Reilly Media, 2008. Eloquent JavaScript, 2nd edition, by Marriage and Haverbeek No Starch Press, 2014. JavaScript: The Definitive Guide, 4th edition, by David Flanagan, O'Reilly Media, 2001. The Mozilla Developer Network's JavaScript resources: https://developer.mozilla.org/nus/docs/web/javascript/. Codecademy JavaScript courses: http://www.codecademy.com/n/tracks/javascript/. To create websites, you need to use some HTML and CSS, along with JavaScript. Chapter 5, but there's much more to learn. Here are some places you can learn more about HTML. The Mozilla Developer Network's Introduction to HTML, https://developer.mozilla.org/nus/docs/web/guide/html/introduction/. Codecademy HTML CSS course: http://www.codecademy.com/tracks/web/. Mozilla Webmaker https://webmaker.org/. Learn more about CSS here. The Mozilla Developer Network's Getting Started with CSS: https://developer.mozilla.org/nus/docs/web/guide/css/getting started/. Codecademy HTML CSS course: http://www.codecademy.com/tracks/web/. It allows people to access the page from the internet. You can also write programs for the server called server-side code to make the server generate new HTML files each time a web page is loaded. For example, when you visit http://twitter.com/, a program runs on a server that finds the latest tweets for your feed, generates an HTML file containing those tweets, and sends that file to your browser. Node.js lets you write server-side code in JavaScript. Find out more about Node.js with these links. Node.js documentation: http://nodejs.org/. The Node Beginner Book: http://www.nodebeginner.org/. If you want to make interactive graphics in JavaScript, you have two main options: the Canvas element and SVG. Canvas. Here are some tutorials and games you can use to learn more. The Mozilla Developer Network's Canvas tutorial: https://developer.mozilla.org/nus/docs/web/api/canvas api/tutorial/. Code Monster from Crunchzilla: http://www.crunchzilla.com/codemonster/. Each animation step. SVG programming can be difficult to get the hang of, but it's much easier if you use the JavaScript library called Raphael. Here are some resources for learning Raphael. Raphael website: http://raphaeljs.com/. An introduction to the Raphael.js library: http://code.tutsplus.com/tutorials/ an introduction to Raphael.js library net 7186/. Remember how in chapter 13 we told Canvas we wanted to make a 2D drawing context by calling canvas.getContext2D. It's also possible to do 3D graphics using Canvas. This is another one of those areas where it's easier to use a library, so I'd recommend using the library 3.js. Here are some resources for learning 3.js. 3.js manual http://3os.org/docs/index.html manual The Beginner's Guide to 3.js http://blog.teamtreehouse.com/The Beginner's Guide to 3js/ You can even control robots using JavaScript. For example, the Parrot AR.drone is a small flying helicopter that you can control using Node.js. Or you can check out Johnny 5, a JavaScript library that lets you use Node.js to control devices such as the Arduino, a popular microcontroller that's used in lots of homemade electronics and robotics projects. Here are some resources for learning how to control robots and other devices with JavaScript. NodeARDrone https://github.com/felixga/NodeARDrone/ Nodecopter http://nodecopter.com/ Nodebots http://nodebots.io/ Johnny5 https://github.com/ruldron/Johnny5/ JavaScript also allows you to do advanced audio programming in web browsers using the Web Audio API, short for Application Programming Interface. You can use the Web Audio API to make sound effects or even create your own music. Here are some resources for learning more about the Web Audio API. The Mozilla Developer Network's Web Audio API https://developer.mozilla.org/nus/docs/web/api/web audio API/ HTML5 rocks. Getting started with Web Audio API. http://www.html5rocks.com/n/tutorials/webaudio/intro/. If you want to do more game programming in JavaScript, you might want to try using a game engine. A game engine is a collection of code that handles a lot of the lower level concerns of the game, like keyboard and mouse input, allowing you to concentrate on the parts that make your game different. Here are some resources you can check out to learn more about game programming and game engines. Crafty Game Engine http://craftyhus.com/ Pixie Renderer https://github.com/goodboydigital/pixie.js HTML5 Game Engines http://html5gameengine.com/ Udacity HTML5 Game Development https://www.udacity.com/course/cs255 3D Game Programming for Kids by Chris Strong. Pragmatic Programmers, 2013. What if you want to share all the great JavaScript you've written with the world? There are many ways to do that. One of the easier ones is JSFiddle http://jsfiddle.net/. Just type your JavaScript in the JavaScript box, add any HTML you want in the HTML box, and then click Run to run your program. To share it, click Save, which gives you a URL that you can then share with anyone. The world of computer programming has all kinds of special terms and definitions that can take some time to get the hang of. In this glossary, you will find definitions for many of the programming terms used in this book. As you're reading this book, if you come across a term that you don't quite understand, you can look here for a brief explanation. Argument: a value that can be passed into a function. Array: a list of JavaScript values. In an array, each value has an index, which is the numbered position of that value in the array. The first value is at index 0, the next value is at index 1, and so on. Attribute: a key value pair in an HTML element. You can use HTML attributes to control certain aspects of an element, like where the element links to or the size of the element. Boolean a value that can be either true or false. Call to execute or run a function. To call functions in JavaScript, you enter the function name followed by a pair of parentheses with any arguments inside the parentheses. Camel case, a common way to name variables in which you capitalize the first letter of each word except the first word and then join all the words to make one long word, like so. My camel case a variable. Comment text in a program that is not executed by the JavaScript interpreter. Comments are just there to describe the program for the person reading the code. Conditional statement, a statement that executes code after checking a condition. If the condition is true, the statement will execute one bit of code. If the condition is false, it will execute a different bit of code or stop altogether. Examples include if statements and if, else statements. Constructor, a kind of function that's used to create multiple objects so that they share built-in properties. Control structure, a way to control when a piece of code is run and how often it's run. Examples include conditional statements which control when code is run by checking a condition and loops which repeat a piece of code a certain number of times. A small pop-up window. You can use JavaScript to open different kinds of dialogues in a browser, such as an alert to display a message or a prompt to ask a question and receive input. Document Object Model DOM. The way that web browsers organize and keep track of HTML elements on a web page. These elements are organized in a tree-like structure called the DOM tree. JavaScript and jQuery provide methods that work with the DOM to create and modify elements. Element part of an HTML page, such as a header, a paragraph, or the body. An element is marked by start and end tags which determine what type of element it is and includes everything in between. The DOM tree is made up of these elements. Event, an action that happens in the browser, such as a mouse click or a keyboard press by the user. We can detect and respond to these events with event handlers. Event handler, a function that is called whenever a certain event happens in a certain HTML element. For example, in Chapter 11 game, we create an event handler function that is called whenever the user clicks on a map image. Execute, to run a piece of code, such as a program or function. Function, a piece of code that bundles multiple statements so that they are all executed together. A function makes it easy to repeat a certain action in different parts of a program. A function can take arguments as input, and it will output a return value. Increment, to increase the value of a variable, usually by 1. Index, a number that indicates the position of a value inside an array. The index can be used to access a specific value in an array. Infinite loop, a loop that never stops repeating, often causing the interpreter to crash. This error can occur if the conditions of a loop are set up incorrectly. Interpreter, a piece of software that reads and runs code. Web browsers contain a JavaScript interpreter, which we use to run our JavaScript throughout this book. All elements begin with a start tag, and most end with an end tag. These tags determine what type of element is created, and the start tag can include attributes for the element. Text editor, a computer program used to write and edit plain text, without any special formatting like font style or color. A good text editor is helpful for writing programs, which are written in plain text. Undefined, a value that JavaScript uses when something like a property or variable doesn't have any particular value assigned to it. Variable, a way of giving a JavaScript value a name. After you assign a value to a variable, you can use the variable name later to retrieve the value. With eSpace, invisible characters like spaces, new lines, and tabs. Visit http://www.nostarch.com/javascript for kids for updates, errata, and other information. Python for Kids: A Playful Introduction to Programming by Jason R. Briggs. December 2012, 344 pages, 34.95. ISBN 978-1-59327-407-8 Full color. Ruby Wizardry: An Introduction to Programming for Kids by Eric Weinstein. December 2014, 360 pages, 29.95. ISBN 978-1-59327-566-2. Lorem Ipsum: A Story About Computer Science and Other Improbable Things by Carlos Bueno. December 2014, 192 pages, 16.95. ISBN 978-1-59327-574-7 Full color. Survive. Inside the Human Body, Vol. 1. The Digestive System by Gomdori Co. and Hein Dong Han. October 2013, 184 pages, 17.95. ISBN 978-1-59327-471-9 Full color. Eloquent JavaScript, 2nd edition: A Modern Introduction to Programming by Marich and Haver-Beek. December 2014, 400 pages, 39.95. ISBN 978-1-59327-584-6. The Manga Guide to Databases by Mana Takahashi, Shoko Azuma, and Trend Pro Co., Ltd. January 2009, 224 pages, 19.95. ISBN 978-1-59327-190-9800, 420-7240 or 415-863-9900. Sales nostarch.com. www.nostarch.com. A note on the digital index: a link in an index entry is displayed as the section title in which that entry appears. Because some sections have multiple index markers, it is not unusual for an entry to have several links to the same section. Clicking on any link will take you directly to the place in the text in which the marker appears. Symbols. Not. What is JavaScript? Double quotation mark, equals plus equals and equals minus equals, creating objects. ID in selector strings, replacing the heading text using jQuery. jQuery function, replacing the heading text using jQuery. See also jQuery. End, changing strings to all capital or all lowercase letters, combining logical operators. Single quotation mark, strings. Parentheses, numbers, and operators, getting a single character from a string, calling a function. Multiplication, numbers, and operators. Equals multiply and assign, equals plus equals and equals minus equals, programming challenges. Addition, numbers, and operators, joining strings, programming challenges, creating a prompt with strings, joining strings, programming challenges, creating a prompt. Increment, age in seconds. Equals add and assign, incrementing and decrementing, keeping track of owed money. Comma, passing multiple arguments to a function. Subtraction, numbers, and operators. Decrement, age in seconds. Equals subtract and assign, incrementing and decrementing. Period, keys without quotes. C. Notation. Slash division, numbers, and operators. Slash equals divide and assign, equals plus equals and equals minus equals. Colon, creating objects. Equals 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 exactly equals, equal to, chaining if, else statements. Greater than, combining logical operators. Square brackets, finding the length of a string. Why should you care about arrays? Creating an array, accessing an array's elements, mixing data types in an array. Keys without quotes, accessing a character from a string with, finding the length of a string, accessing elements from an array with, creating an array. Mixing data types in an array, accessing values and objects with, keys without quotes, adding elements to an array with, accessing an array's elements, creating an array with. Why should you care about arrays? Curly brackets, objects, accessing values and objects. Or, and, combining logical operators a. Add and assign equals operator, incrementing and decrementing, keeping track of odd money addition, numbers, and operators, joining strings, programming challenges, creating a prompt with strings. Joining strings, programming challenges, creating a prompt alert method, using confirm to ask a yes or no question and operator, changing strings to all capital or all lowercase letters. Combining logical operators, animation, calling code multiple times with set interval, moving across the page, animating the size of a square, animating the size of a square, bouncing a ball. With canvas, moving across the page, animating the size of a square, animating the size of a square, bouncing a ball. Bouncing ball, bouncing a ball. Changing size, animating the size of a square, moving horizontally, moving across the page, random beat, animating the size of a square with set interval. Calling code multiple times with set interval, append jQuery method, creating new elements with jQuery, drawing the cars. A string, accessing values and objects, combining arrays and objects, for loops, glossary, accessing, creating an array, adding elements to, finding the length of an array. Removing elements from an array and data types, mixing data types in an array, combining multiple, removing elements from an array, combining with objects. Combining arrays and objects, converting to a string, finding the index of an element in an array, creating. Why should you care about arrays? Finding index of element in, joining multiple arrays, finding length of, working with arrays, looping through elements of, for loops, modifying, accessing an array's elements, removing elements from, adding elements to an array, vs. Objects, accessing values and objects, assigning values, variables, attributes, HTML, adding links to your HTML, glossary b. Begin path context method, drawing lines or paths, block level HTML elements, the p element body, if statements, while loops, preventing infinite loops, functions of a control structure, if statements, while loops, preventing infinite loops of a function, functions body element, a full HTML document, booleans, data types and variables, changing strings to all capital or all lowercase letters. Changing strings to all capital or all lowercase letters, combining logical operators, embedding JavaScript in HTML, creating a prompt, glossary, comparing numbers with, combining logical operators for yes or no answers, creating a prompt. Square, finding the length of a string, see square brackets. Break keyword, handling the player's input, see. Calling, finding the length of an array, calling a function, passing arguments into functions, glossary, functions, calling a function, passing arguments into functions, glossary, methods. Finding the length of an array, camel case, naming variables, glossary, canvas element, the canvas element, the canvas element, selecting and saving the canvas element, drawing multiple squares. Drawing rectangle outlines, drawing lines or paths, drawing lines or paths, filling paths, making things move on the canvas, moving across the page, clearing the canvas. Animating the size of a square, animating the size of a square, bouncing a ball. CSS animating, making things move on the canvas, moving across the page, animating the size of a square, animating the size of a square, bouncing a ball. Bouncing ball, bouncing a ball. Changing size, Animating the size of a square moving horizontally. Moving across the page random B. Animating the size of a square circles and arcs. Filling paths clearing. Clearing the canvas colors. Drawing multiple squares creating the canvas element lines and paths. Drawing lines or paths. Drawing lines or paths drawing. Drawing lines or paths filling. Drawing lines or paths rectangles and squares. Selecting and saving the canvas element. Drawing rectangle outlines drawing, selecting, and saving the canvas element. Data types, and variables. Glossary decrementing. Age in seconds. Glossary dialogues. Creating a hangman game. Glossary divide and assign slash operator. Equals plus equals and equals minus equals. Division, numbers, and operators document object model DOM. The DOM in jQuery. Glossary document.getElement via DOM method. Using ID to identify elements. The canvas element DOM document object model, the DOM, and jQuery. Glossary DOM tree, the DOM, and jQuery dot notation. Keys without quotes. Adding values to objects, combining arrays, and objects. Object-oriented programming. Object-oriented programming accessing object keys with. Combining arrays and objects adding keys to objects with. Adding values to objects adding methods to objects with. Object-oriented programming adding properties to objects with. Object-oriented programming double equals operator. Equal to double quotation mark. Equals plus equals and equals minus equals. Creating objects drawing context for canvas. Selecting and saving the canvas element. Equal to equals operator. Equal to. Chaining if. Else statements errors. The game code event handlers. Responding to user actions. Designing the game. Picking random numbers. Glossary event object. Responding to user actions. The click handler exactly equals operator. Equal to. Chaining if. Else statements execute. Writing some JavaScript. Glossary F. Fade in jQuery method. Chaining jQuery animations fade out jQuery method. Creating new elements with jQuery fade to jQuery method. Programming challenges false Boolean value, data types, and variables. Changing strings to all capital or all lowercase letters. See also Booleans. Fill context method, drawing lines, or paths. A new circle function fill rect context method. The canvas element, drawing lines, or paths. Clearing the canvas. Defining the score variable. Building the block constructor fill style context property. Drawing multiple squares. Drawing the B. Defining the score variable. Writing the drawScore function. Building the block constructor fill text context method. Displaying the score. Setting the text baseline find the buried treasure. Game. Find the buried treasure. Find the buried treasure. Designing the game. Creating the web page with HTML. Picking random numbers. The click handler. Telling the player how close they are. Telling the player how close they are. Telling the player how close they are calculating distances. The click handler. Picking random numbers code for. Telling the player how close they are creating web page. Designing the game design. Find the buried treasure. For loops. Preventing infinite loops function keyword. Passing multiple arguments to a function. See also functions. Functions. Calling a function. Passing arguments into functions. Passing multiple arguments to a function. Passing multiple arguments to a function. Using functions to simplify code. Leaving a function early with return. Using return multiple times instead of if. Else statements. Glossary arguments. Passing arguments into functions. Passing multiple arguments to a function calling. Calling a function. Passing arguments into functions. Glossary leaving early. Leaving a function early with returning values from. Calling a function. Passing multiple arguments to a function. Glossary shorthand. Using return multiple times instead of if. Else statements simplifying code with. Using functions to simplify code vs. If. Else statements. Leaving a function early with return g. Games. Programming. Meet JavaScript. Audio programming. See also find the buried treasure. Game. Hangman game. Snake game. Get context canvas method. The canvas element getElement viewed. Using ID to identify elements. The canvas element Google Chrome, web browser, and console. Writing some JavaScript graphical programming. Meet JavaScript greater than operator. Combining logical operators H1 element. Tags and elements hangman game. Creating a hangman game. Why use alert instead of console.log. Designing the game loop. Coding the game loop. Coding the game loop. Handling the player's input. Updating the game state. Updating the game state. Programming challenges. Programming challenges. Programming challenges. Creating with functions. Programming challenges design. Why use alert instead of console.log. Displaying player's progress. Coding the game loop drawing. Programming challenges. Programming challenges guesses. Programming challenges hangman. Programming challenges responding to player input. Coding the game loop updating game state. Handling the player's input when condition. Updating the game state head element. A full HTML document hide attribute. Creating the web page with HTML. The canvas element hide jQuery method. Chaining jQuery animations for F attribute. Link attributes HTML. The basics of HTML. Tags and elements. A full HTML document. A full HTML document. Adding links to your HTML, the DOM, and jQuery. More JavaScript. Glossary. Glossary attributes. Adding links to your HTML. Glossary elements. Tags and elements. Glossary hierarchy. A full HTML document nesting. A full HTML document HTML element. A full HTML document. The mouse move event hyperlinks. The basics of HTML. HTML hierarchy ID attribute. Using ID to identify elements. Replacing the heading text using jQuery if statements. Embedding JavaScript in HTML if. Else statements. Embedding JavaScript in HTML. If statements. Leaving a function early with return img element. Designing the game. Picking random numbers. Drawing the cars. Finding. Joining multiple arrays with strings. Using math.random. Index of method. Joining multiple arrays infinite loops. Counting sheet with a while loop. Glossary inline HTML elements. With eSpace in HTML and block level elements inner HTML property. Using ID to identify elements interactive programming. Interactive programming interval ID. Calling code multiple times with set interval. Using set interval to animate the game. Ending the game. Putting it all together Join method. Finding the index of an element in an array. Programming challenges jQuery, the DOM, and jQuery. Using jQuery to work with the DOM tree. Using jQuery to work with the DOM tree. Replacing the heading text using jQuery. Creating new elements with jQuery. Creating new elements with jQuery. Controlling animations with the keyboard. Reacting to the keyboard. Glossary. Function. Replacing the heading text using jQuery animating elements with. Creating new elements with jQuery creating new elements with. Creating new elements with jQuery keyboard events. Responding with. Controlling animations with the keyboard. Reacting to the keyboard loading on page. Using jQuery to work with the DOM tree replacing page text with. Using jQuery to work with the DOM tree Key value pairs in objects. Objects. Creating objects. Object-oriented programming. Glossary key code event property. adding the keydown event handler. Setting the snake's direction with the keyboard keydown event, controlling animations with the keyboard, reacting to the keyboard, setting the snake's direction with the keyboard keys and objects. Objects, creating objects, adding values to objects, object. Length property, joining strings, working with arrays, creating a random insult generator, exploring objects in the console on arrays, working with arrays, creating a random insult generator. Exploring objects in the console on strings, joining strings less than. Drawing lines or paths line width context property, drawing rectangle outlines, drawing the v-links, the basics of HTML, HTML hierarchy literals, objects blocks, embedding JavaScript in HTML loops. Conditionals and loops, while loops, preventing infinite loops, glossary for loops, preventing infinite loops, while loops m. Math.floor, using math.random, programming challenges math.py, drawing arcs and circles math.random.